I'm super excited about this next stop. It is going to be so much fun, and we're pretty close, so let's go. Almost here. Now this particular location I've wanted to visit ever since I have seen the movie Biodome, and then I realized that it was like a real thing. Oh my goodness. Okay, adventurers, I think this is as good a time as any to say hello, adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are in Arizona and we are going to Biosphere 2. I am so excited about this. This has been on my bucket list for quite some time, and I finally made it out here, and so now we're gonna go exploring. Now I don't know what exactly to expect. I can only in my mind visualize what I think might be here, but just to kind of give us a visual, this is what it looks like. Wow. Doesn't this look cool? Now this is open until 4 o'clock. It opens at 9 o'clock every morning, and you can tour it. I'm not exactly sure what exactly touring it entails yet, but we are about to find out, so let's go. A few small things before we go in. We are supposed to use this QR code to actually purchase our tickets, and then also to download the Biosphere app. We are asked to wear a mask and maintain social distance at all times. So let's go with this one first. Okay, we've purchased our ticket. It was $25, and we purchased a time slot, so it's time for us to go explore. Okay guys, this is a little bit different of a style tour. It's a self-guided tour, but you use the app to get around. So what you're doing is you're looking for signs that look like this one right here, and also you're coordinating it with the app. So like right now, I am walking on the red arrows, which will take me in this direction and toward the beginning of the tour. And as I am able to
Arizona's Biosphere 2.
Listen to the tour.
Adams, and I'm going to be one of your tour guides today.
And my name is Katie Morgan. I will also be one of your tour guides. We look forward to telling you about...
Okay, a few things that they touch on during the intro. Definitely it's going to be a walking tour, so we needed to wear good shoes, which we're good. They're dirty, but they're good. Also, they encourage you to stop frequently, listen to the app, but also to observe and to take as many pictures as you want. So we are right on this, and already it's gorgeous out here. Look at this. We're in the middle of the desert, and there is green, green grass. I'm loving this. Stop 101 right here is all about the history of the property. And did you know at one point in time that the Motorola company owned all of this? They actually had turned it into a place where they would do executive trainings. Now that happened like in the 60s and early 70s. And at one point after that, the University of Arizona took over the property due to a land swap. They continued using it for several years until 1984. That's whenever Biosphere 2 was actually constructed. And that is where we currently are today. From 1984 to present day, Biosphere 2 has been the piece of property that has been the spectacle for all to come and see. And with stops like this, I can understand why. If I'm looking up here right now, I can see the snow-covered mountain, but I can also see the heat radiating off of it because it is a nice warm summer day. Way out there, you can see that super clear through here. But alas, we are off to the next stop. And this gets more and more intriguing as we go. See, all of this at one point in time was a hotel that was built here, and it had hotel and dining accommodations. Now it serves as a slightly different purpose, but cool to see just the same. Oh my goodness, I see it. I see it. And you can see it too. There is the top of the Biosphere 2. This is exciting. This is exciting.
In 1984, Space Biosphere Ventures purchased this property, and they started to build it out. Over here you can see the test module.
Now, before we had this big guy over here, we actually started out with something much smaller. This was the test structure right here. And then they built out the greenhouses, which are in the back, and then also some of these other smaller structures that are in front of us from this viewpoint, which is 102. Like in all reality, you have to crawl before you can walk, and they definitely were doing that with these structures. They were kind of learning what would work, what wouldn't work, what would work best, how they could tweak things, and if this would be actually sustainable. So all of these structures are very important and still used today. Now, even more so though, this building, the one that's kind of dome-like, this is actually where the mission control was, so that whenever they put everything together over here in this big guy, and they actually had people inhabiting it, just like in the movie, they could monitor all of the different things that were going on from a safe location that wouldn't contaminate the initial space. So this is so cool. So cool. Path goes this way, so we go this way. As we go along the path, we see different pieces of art also, and each one of them has a sign that's like this right here, telling us who the artist is and a brief bio of who they were and what they've done. Not to mention the explanation for the art itself that we're seeing right here on property. There's some really neat stuff out here, guys. Some really neat stuff. And yeah, this is an experience. Here we learn a little bit more about the rainwater harvesting system that they have here at the Biosphere Village. And there's an illustration that you can see right here of how exactly it works. With only 1 inch of rainwater actually falling, they can gather up to 1,025 gallons of water, which is insane. But let's look at the building a little bit closer to see how exactly that works. Here you can see a series of the different gutters that filter the water into these large barrel-like structures, which are the cisterns. And these are kind of located at different places around the campus here. And can I just mention how beautiful some of these rocks are here?
Rainforest, an ocean, a savanna, a marsh, a desert, an agricultural area, and a living quarters. Just like our houses, they had complete kitchen, dining area, apartments, bathrooms, workout facilities.
At Stop 103, we learn about the endeavor of the people who lived inside the biosphere and kind of what happened along the way. Did you know, for example, that there were actually 2 groups of people who lived actually physically in the biosphere? Well, there were, and some things kind of happened along the way. The first group of people made it all the way to day 500 before they realized that there was going to have to be some changes made. In fact, the changes that had to be made were pretty serious. Inside here, plants were thriving so well that they were creating far too much carbon dioxide and not enough oxygen. So the people who were actually inhabiting this area had dropped to a very low percentage. Just to kind of give you an idea. Currently, right now, where we are standing, 21%. However, inside, it was only 14%. So it made it very hard for them to function in a capacity that they felt safe. So, as a result of this, scientists decided they were going to pipe in some oxygen. No big deal, right? Oh, but it was. Take in that oxygen. Feel that oxygen. See how it feels. Now, can you imagine it being very heavy? Well, that's unfortunately what they were experiencing. And because of that, they piped in that oxygen. Unfortunately, they didn't tell people that they were doing that. And because this was so widely publicized, they got a lot of scrutiny because they weren't being completely forthcoming with all of the details. And it lost some credibility in doing so. And this was kind of bad because, I mean, they made it 500 days, finding all of these amazing things, doing all of these cool experiments, only to be slightly discredited because of a technical flaw. The second crew came in with 1 less person, hoping to offset some of that oxygen situation. But again, at some point, this kind of fell apart. And they decided to scrap the whole inhabiting the space idea and instead turn it into a research facility where they could learn more about the plants and different aspects of different kinds of environments. And at that point, Columbia University kind of took the reins. Now, Columbia stuck with it for quite some time until about 2011. 2011 is whenever the University of Arizona took over, because they could see the value that was being produced from the Biosphere 2 and how that they could implement it into learning more and furthering some of the projects that they were already currently working on. So now, this is the University of Arizona in conjunction with Biosphere 2. This thing is fascinating. It tells you a lot about the layout and also where you can find different things, but also if you listen to Stop 104, it explains even further in detail what some of these items are. Like, for example, this tower here is actually called the library, and it would give them a 360-degree view of the horizon. However, they said they didn't use that very often because there were a lot of stairs to get there. Looking on at this map, it says here that it is 7.2 million cubic feet under the glass itself with 6,500 window panes. There's also 27.7 meters tall at the highest point and 2.6 million liters of ocean system or water. That is 670,000 gallons of water. Biosphere 2 was considered to be an engineering marvel, a single place where all of these different kinds of environments could exist together and thrive, and they could be studied, and you could learn about each and every one of them uniquely. And I think that that is really, really cool. But without further ado, we're actually going into, finally, Biosphere 2.
Without oil and limited ingredients.
The last big onion.
Bad cooks learned fast because ruined or burned meals could not be replaced with additional ingredients. Once every 8 days, each crew member cooked for everyone.
Along this hall, we have tons of photos of the actual people who lived inside of the Biosphere 2 and the many jobs that they would have had to have done. It's very fascinating. We just checked out the kitchen area, which was very nice, but also very dated to the 80s. And we are about to go up this hall right here to see the actual sleeping quarters of where each of the residents would have actually lived during that 2-year span. It's fascinating in here, guys, and it's very well done. I think that I was expecting it to look a little bit different. I don't know what was in my mind, but yeah, definitely going up here. Now the apartments here are quite interesting because each person had their own apartment, and it was a 2-story apartment, and there were 10 of these all together, and so you get to glimpse in and kind of see what they had going on. Now each one of them decorated it according to their own taste and style. They all could have their own things that they wanted to bring with them, and so some of them focused on education while they were here, some of them focused on art, some of them loved reading. So each one of them has something a little bit different, and it's really nice. It says here that they were actually kind of like their own personal castle, their way to get away from everything and to kind of retreat. So they have music, they have television even. So this is a very different experience than I was expecting. This is a very cool way to kind of adapt to all the things that you're having to go through being here for 2 solid years. Now, as we look around some of these rooms, of course, these are staff only, but they are because they're still used actively for the college itself and for the study programs that they're doing. So we are, again, following the red arrows and checking out all of the different spaces that are available to us. It is fascinating. These are amazing. So not only do you have photos here, but you also have different documentation that was made on a day-to-day basis by those inside of the biodome, from work schedules to seed inventory to alarms, different kinds of aspects of day-to-day life. And this display actually goes on a little bit further and talks about observations on newborn livestock, different kinds of insects that they're recording. And you can see the dates on these: 1994, 1992, and again, some photos and also some of the written articles about Biosphere 2. I think this has to be my favorite titled one though: Strange Bugs, Critters, and Pollinator Log in Wilderness. And also it's kind of interesting because each person has documented things a little bit differently. Some use basic descriptions, others write full-on books about different kinds of things that they're observing. It's quite interesting. Now, something kind of off topic, there was actually a movie that was filmed here. It was not the Pauly Shore movie that I was talking about. That one was just kind of like a spoofy thing. But William Shatner actually recorded a movie here, and he used this structure as a portion of his movie where he was at Area 51. Clearly we're in a different state, but at the same time, cool just the same. Now, why is all of this on here when these clearly are not at Biosphere 2? Well, all of these areas right here are connected to Biosphere 2, believe it or not, because we are able to observe things in a similar fashion to what they happen in nature by doing it here in the controlled environment of the Biosphere. So these are all photos from different kinds of places that signify different kinds of aspects of either the water cycle or other aspects. And this is all a part of the Landscape Evolution Observatory. And you can see here people at work, some of the different photos, and then also one of the hard hats. Now, why are we learning about this particular group, which they call LEO, while we're in Biosphere 2? Well, that is the actual program that the University of Arizona is using currently and still learning about things with today. And it is an ongoing cycle where they are going through tons of different experiments on a daily basis. Really interesting. It's a little hard to see, but there is actually a huge green slope right here, and that is part of the current LEO experiments. Those are actually things that have tons of little sensors. You can see the little plastic areas kind of in there a little bit. And yeah, we're going to learn a little bit more about those as we continue going. But that relates directly to what we just learned at the last stop there with the University of Arizona. It's cool because as you go around, you see even more QR codes. And this one actually tells you more about the different plants in the Biosphere 2. So not only do you have the app and the ticket purchasing on QR, but also all of the information inside. Very fascinating.
As their sweet shop. As you look around you, you're going to see some plants that may look familiar. This includes fig trees, banana trees, citrus like lemons and limes.
So as you can see from the app, it tells us a little bit more about this area. It says that this was actually considered to be the sweet shop because it had like the figs and the bananas and even coffee. But the coffee was hard. The coffee was really hard. Now, can you imagine having to, 1, grow your own coffee, 2, roast your own beans and grind your own beans just to make the coffee? It would be a lot. So as a result of this, they didn't have coffee near as often as they thought they would. They in fact only had it every 2 to 3 weeks on average, and that was pushing it, but there's more. The area that we just saw with the big green thing, that actually was another area where they would actually do things when it came to making products for them to consume. Most of the time, they were on a little bit of a calorie deficit in comparison to what we normally would have in everyday life. And most of the things that they had were plant-based. So they even made their own banana wine. Right? They were very resourceful, to say the least. But this is a very cool stop, and it opens up into something very interesting outside. Let's go. Inside we get a better glance at the LEO project, and these were about 100 feet long altogether. This is pretty interesting to see because they conducted a lot of different kinds of experiments using this, and it was implemented after Biosphere 2 had been in its heyday already. So this was something that came along even more recently and has allowed them to study and learn so much even today. So what exactly do they do in this experiment? That's the elephant in the room. Actually, it's pretty interesting. They have started studying how water comes down from a higher elevation, filters down, and what it ultimately does after that. It's really interesting because a lot of times we don't think about that. We just think about, oh, the water comes down and then it flows into rivers and lakes and then it's out to the ocean it goes. But in reality, it also impacts the land around it in a very different way depending on where you are in the country and what kind of moisture level you typically have. So by looking into these and seeing those massive slopes, that's what they're observing. The different factors that go in after the fact, even well into the lower portions of the ground, way below just the surface itself. So this is very, very cool. Something even more fascinating, there are currently no plants on any of these slopes right up here. So at some point in time, they're hoping to add that and see how that also impacts what happens overall. So right now they're following it in its most basic form, but they're going to add different variables to change that to see how that impacts the overall environment also. So neat. So if you come out here at any given time, it could be a little bit different. Here we see the inner workings of what makes this thing able to be inhabited. The taller structures on the right hand side, those are actually cooling towers which cool the waters and allow it to drop down in temperatures. Then in the other buildings we have generators, and they actually have dual fuel, so two different kinds of generators that can be used for the Biosphere 2 itself. Now why is this important? Because without the energy, it would bake inside the Biosphere. They have to have some kind of electricity and power to be able to make it where you can live in it. Because what happens when you have a large building like this, that's basically a greenhouse, it gets very warm very quickly. So they have to have alternative sources for pumping water and to keep things cool and to keep it livable for the people inside. But in addition to the people living inside, there also had to be rotating staff that would work on all of those systems to make sure they were fully functioning from the outside. So there was a 24-hour-a-day rotating service of people who would come in and run what they called a SCADA program to make sure that all of the systems were in line and nothing bad was happening. And they would monitor all of these different aspects of being in Biosphere 2, all the while being outside of Biosphere 2. We have one last stop before we go inside. This is stop 112, the lungs. And would you believe it if I told you that this big guy right here is actually called a lung? Now, much like our lungs that expand and contract, these things actually allowed air to do just that. Whenever they were sealed into the biosphere, air had to go somewhere, and it was able to do so using these lungs. There's one on each side actually. And what it would do is it would allow the hot air to expand off into this area, thus keeping the biospherians that lived inside of this safe. Otherwise, what would happen? Well, the windows would explode because the air has to go somewhere. So the lungs were a crucial part of the build, but also one of the biggest marvels in this entire project because they had such a cool function, but at the same time, took a little thought to get there. Without further ado, now that we've learned about all of the inner workings, it's time to go inside. This is what I've been excited about the most. This desert is amazing. So this is not based off of the area that we're currently in Arizona. It's actually based off of what they call a fog desert. So the plants here are very different, but they also get their water very differently. And as you go along on the tour, it tells you a little bit more about why they selected this and what exactly they were observing. And oh my goodness, it's fascinating. Some of these plants I've never seen before, and they just look so neat. And then you come in here and it's a very sweltering heat because you're in the desert. It's very like moist though, which is interesting. And then as you kind of see the different kinds of pieces of the rocks and then the sands, all of these were specially selected to mimic the coastal fog deserts that are in like Mexico. Super, super neat. Wow, this place is so beyond what I even expected. This is crazy because there are trees and plants that are producing like avocados and all sorts of interesting things as we're kind of walking through. And the more that you look around, the more that you see here. It's wild. I thought it couldn't get any cooler. I was wrong. The ocean is right here. Like what? The ocean inside of a building. Insane. Okay, so the interesting backstory on the ocean is that at one point in time, there was an active coral reef inside, and it would support all of these different kinds of critters and things like that that you would typically find in the ocean, because this is the largest kind of area of this kind. Whenever Columbia was here, they actually wanted to study the impact of the coral and additional CO2. And eventually they learned a lot of different things as a result of that. However, the coral eventually started to die off after it was no longer maintained by Columbia. They're going to be implementing a new coral study that talks about heat in coral reefs because our oceans are starting to warm up. So they're going to conduct that right here in Biosphere 2. Super, super cool.
Situated on the northern end of the structure, and it has a large diversity of plants inside of this tropical system.
Coming out of the rainforest, I am sweating. Now that was kind of neat, but it was a little bit more loud in there. And I did want to share a few things about the rainforest with you. They actually have 3 different levels of vegetation. So they have like the upper canopy, they have the lower ground structure, and then they have some mid-level plants. Now initially they planted a lot of different plants that did not ultimately end up making it. But despite that, there's still about 100 different species inside. Also, there's some different critters inside that you might be able to find. Smaller, much smaller, but I did find some really cool like ants, and that was kind of neat. But this place is huge. The rainforest structure is, I believe, the largest independent structure. Very, very cool. Now we follow the blue arrows until we get back to the main building. That doesn't mean we're finished yet. There are actually a couple more stops on our tour that we just haven't gotten to yet. It's pretty cool. I really appreciate that not only do you have the stops that you can find, but then you can go back into the app and revisit each one of those. So if you did miss something, you can definitely hear it again, which is very handy, especially whenever you're doing something like I am here with the channel. So I make sure that I don't miss out on any of the cool details. Something pretty neat. If you're interested in coming out here and learning more about Biosphere 2, they actually have accommodations that you can find on their website. That's what we're looking at right now. This is amazing. And throughout here, gorgeous, gorgeous pieces like this, but also stuff like this. Ugh. Oh no. And we're walking and we're looking and we're walking and we're looking. With that, we exit through the gift shop. It was really cool though to be able to come out and follow the stops one by one. Very easy to navigate. I definitely really enjoyed this tour. But now let's go see if we can find a patch. I picked up a Biosphere 2 patch, and some of you have asked me how I attach these to my ceiling. I actually get these little Velcro dots and just place them on the back. Larger patches require a few extras, but all in all, that's how it works. And then I just pick a spot. Where should I put this one? Let's go with over here by Disney maybe. Yeah, that's a little bit big. Let's move it to maybe up here. This works good. We're working our way back slowly. Then it just goes into place. There we go. Back to the van we are, and this has been an exciting adventure here at Biosphere 2. I really enjoyed sharing this adventure with you guys. I hope that you'll come out to places like this and see that they are absolutely amazing. Yeah, we learn a little bit, but it's really cool to see something that is very unique. This isn't something you're gonna find in your own backyard. You're gonna have to actually physically find this location just a little ways outside of Tucson to see it, and I hope you have enjoyed coming with me. If you did, make sure you leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and remember guys, we are not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time, and Biosphere 2 definitely was that. Till next time guys, bye!